I'm still here, Hollywood, and coming up on today's episode, he ruled the highways of Southern California at 100 miles per hour without ever messing up his hair. In the late 70s, he was part of the duo that made Friday nights a time for motorcycles, mirrored shades, and that easygoing charm that could stop a runaway semi in its tracks. He's a Marine, an actor, a producer, and a bona fide pop culture icon. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest from CHiPS, Larry Wilcox. If this is your first time watching or listening to Still Here Hollywood, what took you so long? Even if you're a longtime fan, I have a favor to ask. If you feel it in your heart, please like and follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. Or if you watch on YouTube, please subscribe. And with both, it would be great if you rated and commented on your favorite episodes. Thank you so much. And now, on with the show. Hi, Larry.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me, what was it like as a kid growing up in Wyoming, was it?
Yes.
Who would go on to be a TV star?
Yeah.
Big difference.
Major difference, yeah. It was, like everything in life, there's you walk through this abyss with a kind of a blissful ignorance that is wonderful, right? From Wyoming, I mean, scary. And all of a sudden, you're in Hollywood, Beverly Hills, to make a point, in Wilshire and Doheny, studying at the Beverly Hills Music Academy, music and drama, and looking around at this environment, wondering, where was this when I grew up, right? What happened to me in Wyoming? But it was a major change and transformation, and I kind of went back and forth due to some experiences in life. And but Hollywood was, I was kind of an all-American boy, polite, with manners from there, English manners, I call them. Saying weird things like an anachronism in the city, right? Saying yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and may I please be excused. And all those kinds of things that you learn. And it worked well for me,
And you become very aware of when people give you funny looks.
That's right.
What did I just say?
Yeah.
I remember coming to Los Angeles, seeing the Hollywood sign for the first time. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Or the Capitol Records building.
Yes.
Look at that.
Yes, that was a big deal, Capitol Records.
How did the role in CHiPS come about?
Well,
was there an audition process?
Yeah, no, I didn't have to, because I had started to become this acteur, right? And it's such a toxic, flirtatious affair. It is indeed. But, you experience both sides of the love card, I will, in terms of admiration and employment and then abandonment and so on. So in my case, I went to the Beverly Hills Music Academy, studied music, played piano. I used to play organ in a rock band. Louie helped me round in those songs back in the day, right? C, A minor, F, and G. And this old lady at Lois Hour said, hey, you look like Boy Next Door. Have you ever considered acting, right? I said, yeah, I did some in high school. You don't do much in Wyoming, but I did a little, plays and stuff. Oh, would you like to come to class? No, can't afford them. I'm trying to make a living. And so anyway, I took lessons, and she really liked me, let me study for free, and got me an agent, the Tony Kelman agency, a kids agency. Here I was then, I think around 20 or something. I looked like 15, right? And there was good and bad in that. And so I got an agent, then I started in Lassie, and then I started doing guest stars on all the episodic television. I did everything. Room 22, I worked with Anthony Quinn, major stars and stuff, right? And it was really rather intimidating as a kid from Wyoming. I'm with this guy that I watched on TV, right? Vic Morrow. Once I remember I was co-starring in a movie with him, and I thought, hey, I used to watch Combat all the time as a kid. And anyway, everyone from James Colburn to Charlton Heston to Barbara Hershey to Farrah Fawcett. I got to work with all of them as a co-star, a really good role, not a little role, right? And directors started to use me without having to audition, which was always a compliment, right?
Yeah.
but it's such, there's not any longevity, even though you've reached what is construed as a talent. It doesn't mean anything, right? You work so hard, and in my whole life with this learning thing is always trying to find layers to add to characters and to add little subtleties that aren't in the script and enhance the writer's intent of the script to add some kind of depth to what is not there on screenplay. And it came across well, and I got a lot of roles because of Andy McLaughlin and other major directors. Larry, you have this role, but I have to patronize the producer, so come in and read, but you already have it. I was so arrogant, sometimes I would come in and they'd say, read 37 and 56, scene 37, scene 56. No, I will, but I'm going to read scene 17. Well, that scene only has 5 lines in the elevator. I know, but that's really what this movie's about, those 5 lines. They look at me like that, but that was how cocky I was, right? And confident. And so CHiPS producer comes to me, who saw me in a Y50 and said, hey, we would like you to star in this new television series called CHiPS. I said, well, send the script, right? I got to read the script. What a dumbass. So I would get the scripts and read them and, wallowing in that pomposity and analyze the script and the writer's intent. No, I'm not doing this. Why aren't you doing that? Well, there's a lot of police shows, and I'm not going to do a show like this. It's another cop show, this time on motorcycles. I mean, really? Who wrote this, right? And in retrospect, the writers, to me, is the key, right?
Right.
And so to make a long story short, like all prostitutes, they offer you enough money, and finally they buy you, right? So I did CHiPS, and I must say, in retrospect, doing CHiPS was probably the most difficult role I've ever done in my life. And people would say, why is that? I mean, you read for some really major things, and your tests are off the charts. And why was CHiPS your hardest role? What are you talking about? You said 10-4 and, every 5th page. I mean, get over yourself. That's why it was so hard. There was nothing in my character, right? Punch was the star of the series, and I was the straight guy walking around in the background. So, I tried every little nuance to try to add charm and charisma and some kind of intellect, if you will, to a character that just wasn't written on the page. And it was a hard 5 years. I directed and produced during that time, but just because I was intellectually starved,
You did a lot of stunts, your own stunts on CHiPS, didn't you?
I did some. I always want to pay respect to stuntmen because I don't know if they have a missing cell in their brain or they're just heroes, right? But man, they do some crazy stuff. But I did minor stunts, like they would say, "We want you to do a rodeo scene. Do you want to do the rodeo stuff?" Yeah, I would do that because I do that, right? And I was a professional rodeo cowboy and a PRCA member, and so I'll do that. And we want you to ride the jet skis. I'll do the jet skis. And Erik wouldn't do them because we were sitting out on the jet skis once with our legs backwards, the old 440s that you sit on, and we started doing dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 like Jaws was coming, right? And Erik was out of there. And so I did them with his stuntman, Erik's stuntman. Motorcycles, we did all the riding in and out, and high-speed chases, we did some of them. Intricate riding, we got really good because we went through the CHP motorcycle training, and we had to ride the motorcycle. So both of us got pretty cocky on motorcycles. But it really hairy stunts where they flip the motorcycle and catch on fire, and see ya, I'm not doing that.
I'll be over here.
Yeah, I'll be clapping.
Were there any stunts that were particularly hairy that you said absolutely not?
Yeah, there were a couple. I mean, in various films, there was one I'll just digress for just a second, in a Disney movie where they asked me, I'm riding this Brahma bull, and they asked me to ride the Brahma bull by a tiger. I said, no, I'm not doing that. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I grew up in Wyoming. I know what happens when you do that. My friend got all his face almost removed from his pet bobcat that he took rabbit hunting like an idiot one time, right? And that bobcat turned on him. Yeah, so as I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a problem. No, I'm the trainer. I train the tiger. Come on, are you scared? And then they try to humiliate me, right? Like dumb directors sometimes do, but I'm not a good guy to do that to. That's a trigger for me. I said, I'm not doing it. Okay, then give him your wardrobe. He'll do it. The tiger trainer do it. Okay. He gets on the train bull that you can neck rein like a horse. And he rides him, and sure enough, Tiger goes nuts and gets on the bull and rips his butt off, and he's going to kill him and so on, right? And they finally rescue the trainer, and the poor bull's all bleeding out and so on, you know. So that was one I didn't do. And then another one was on CHiPS 99, which was our reunion movie. And they have me doing this fight sequence. They said, will you do it on the bus? Because the bus is going to be moving. And I said, yeah, how fast is it going to be moving? You're going to be standing up on top. I said, well, it's probably 30, 35, not real fast. I said, that's fast, you know, it's trying to balance up there. They said, well, I said, cable me off somehow. You can fix it in post. So they cabled me off with a cable. Right? They said, are you ready now? I said, no. I said, what do you mean? I said, I got to fall off. Why? I said, because I want to see how far to the ground when I'm going 35 miles an hour I'm going to be. So I fell off. They think I'm an idiot. And what are you doing, Larry? I said, this gets a little bit of my pain threshold away, right? So I do that. I'm okay. I get back on there and do the sequence multiple times. And the old thing in movie making is you've scouted an area for a stunt from A to B. That vector or azimuth or whatever you want to call it, that distance, that's the box that you stay in. And you never go out. Like the alcoholic says, one more and I'll be out of here, right? Don't do one more out of the box. That's what we did. He said, Larry, we're just going to get this close up. We're going to be on the camera shooting up and you fighting with the motorcycle on the side. Could you just do it like another 100, 200 yards? And I said, yeah, okay. We hit a tree, a low-hanging oak tree, took the cameraman's head off the back of his head. Bleeding, you know, first aid, ambulance, crazy stuff. And I had just thrown a punch in this fight sequence on top of the bus. It's the only time that I fell. And I fell flat on the top of the bus. I thought, oh, man, you just screwed that takeoff. It's the only reason I'm alive, because that tree would have taken me out, right? So I did that one and probably, shouldn't have. And it's a good lesson about stunts, you know. Let the stuntmen do it. And the cameramen are exposed, and the crew very often, you know, hanging on that camera shooting a stunt. Explosive shooting, Alec Baldwin, you know, all the problems that people have had over the years with stunts is scary stuff.
John Erik Estrada.
Yeah.
Playing with a prop gun.
Yeah. And Vic Morrow.
Morrow, right.
Chopper. And
Twilight Zone, the movie.
Yeah. And World War III, the director walked out of the helicopter back to the tail rotor and decapitated him, you know. I just met with him in Santa Monica previously about a project I was doing, but it's really scary stuff.
Yeah, you don't think of the being in the entertainment industry as having any danger like that. You and Erik had great chemistry on air.
Yeah. Indeed we did. We're actors.
Back with more in a moment. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/stillherehollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. You can get our episodes a day before they post anywhere else. You can see what guests will be coming up and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll see what goes on before and after the episode, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/stillherehollywood. Are you telling me it wasn't that way from the beginning?
No. Well, you know, it was, again, another evolution, a chronology of toxicity, if you will, and, again, lens issues. At the time, it seemed to me like I was working with the biggest egotistical asshole I'd ever met in my life. Swagged in and out of the toilet, swagged on the set, boast about his feathers, his hair, always primping for makeup. always hitting on every girl, taking her to his motorhome and so on. I said, who is this jackass, right? And then for a long time, for 5 years, I kind of endured that. But I endured it on two levels. I endured it because this series wasn't about you, Larry. So get over it, or make a decision and find a solution and be resilient, but don't wallow in this toxicity. Maybe it's his fault, maybe it's your fault, but don't wallow in it. And so at 5 years, I go to Brazil to do a personal appearance in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, and I come back. When I'm in Sao Paulo, 40,000 people meet me at the airport. Literally 40,000. I got to be Elvis for an hour, right? And I couldn't believe it. I'm thinking, my goodness, look. And they had their little CHiPS uniforms on and all this little kids and stuff. And McCann Erickson, the largest advertising agency, one of them, and this was one of their capitals, had really promoted me coming to do this personal appearance. So I come back, and my agent, and an actor is only as good as his agent, contrary to what people say. You can be a great actor, but if he doesn't have a stable, you're going to be a wannabe. It's a matter of time. And so he says, hey, I just got a call from your friend over at NBC. And what friend's that? And he said, Brandon Tartikoff. I said, oh, yeah. How's he doing? He said, good. He said, he loves your work. Yeah, but they're going to let you go on CHiPS. I said, what do you mean they're going to let me go? And he said, well, they're caught in a hard spot because, Erik Estrada wrecked his motorcycle and almost died, and you gave him first aid. You remember? Because you were in the Marine Corps, you know how to do all that. So I said, yeah. And he said, you saved his life, basically. And he says you saved his life. I said, yeah. And they took him to the hospital, gave him last rites and everything. They thought he punctured his aorta and ruptured his lungs, broke his sternum, wrecked the motorcycle, hit a truck, and he did what's called a high side, where the motorcycle flips up in the air and hits you, right? And it's treacherous. And so Erik was basically, they said he's not going to live. His lungs are filling up with blood. He's bleeding out and so on. So I went to the hospital with him and so on. Anyway, 5 years later, I come back from Brazil, right, to forward jump. And I'm not in the series anymore. And they said, Erik had you fired. I said, what do you mean? How did he do that? And they said, well, when he wrecked his motorcycle? Yeah, well, he wrecked it the second time. I don't know if it was real or on purpose. But he sued MGM and NBC over that wreck. And he had both of them by the you-know-what, because now either they agreed to what his demands were, or he was going to walk, and they were in the position that they had 5 years, but they needed that sixth year for syndication. In order to have an ROI, return on investment, they needed that 6th year. So Brandon said as much as he hates to do this, he really has no choice. And Larry, Erik wants you out of there, and some other actors also, and you're gone, I'm sorry. So I said, oh, shit. Now this is where the spiral begins, right? So I'm a businessman more than really an actor, I think. And so I said, okay, my Rogers & Cowan was my PR agent. That's a whole nother bunch of crap, right? God, I'm so sick of PR. But anyway, so I called him up, and my attorney, Martin Leeds, and we said, hey, we really need to begin the defensive strategy immediately, or an offensive one before NBC or anyone else, Erik Estrada or anyone else, makes a statement about this. Because I look like the loser here. I'm not the loser, I'm the victim, right? But I don't believe in victimhood, so let's find a solution, right? So I hurried up and had this guy, one of their favorite LA Times writers, of course. He comes over and we have lunch at Le Serre in the valley here, with famous French restaurant, one of my favorite places. And I do an interview, and it's a pretty good interview, excuse me for being pompous. And some certain quotes were in there that were perfect on target, right? And so they published that Larry Wilcox has left CHiPS, made a decision to leave CHiPS. So everyone thought I left the show, right? The actor is going to go on and be an actor, right? Lo and behold, did I know what was going to happen, right? But it worked really well. And for a long time, I went on angry at Erik and pissed off, and the hick in me said, I hope I don't meet him, because if I go behind the barn, I might teach him a lesson, right? Not a good path, but anyway, that was the punk in me at that time, and I apologize. So I go 5 years, and I sit down with the producer, Cy Shermack, who says, I said, hey, I wrote these 2 scripts. I produced this television series, the Ray Bradbury Theater, for 5 years all over the world. Obviously, I did the Dorothy Stratton Death of a Playmate. I produced and bought the rights to that. I'm a hustler. You know, when people were asleep at midnight, I'm getting a contract signed by some investigator or whatever. Waco Cole, I heard it and got that before anyone. So I was hustling. So I said, I'm going to do these shows on, you know, how would you like to produce them for me? Because I'm not a line producer, don't want to be. And, you know, I'm a visionary, and I get deals, and I like to make deals and so on. And I said, you know, maybe I don't know, maybe I should hire Erik. I don't know. He said, are you kidding me? I said, what do you mean by that? Why do you say that? I was in that meeting, Larry, when he had you fired. What do you want to hire him for, right? So I said, really? What happened? He told me the whole story I won't bore you with, and it was kind of like troubling, to say the least, right? Abandonment, disloyalty, all the things that I get upset about. And about 5 years went on, and one day my brain clicked on. I said, wow, dude, are you going to wallow in vengeance? Does it make you happy? You want to have a drink tonight over it, and then another drink, and and then pissed off and want to get mad at someone? No. So I said, I'm going to love on this guy. I'm going to love on him unconditionally. Don't fake it. Either you do it or you don't. And if you can't cross that line, don't go there, because that's manipulative. So that's what I did. I just became his best friend, said, hey, buddy, how you doing? What can I do to help you? And any stage that he wanted to upstage me, I helped him. He always gets all the girls, no problem. Get with Ponch, you do the photo with Ponch. He'll want to do, I just compromised, submission on every single level. And I got back all the rewards. Now we have a great relationship, and we have lots of fun. I realized that my new lens, when I look back, is that he was a New Yorker from Harlem, grew up in a tough, broken family, a victim of that, no trust, no loyalty, you know, all the things that screw up personalities. And why are you taking it personal? He was fighting for his life to be the star of the series, and in a way, you were in his way. He didn't need any parasitic drag. He needed to move forward. So I actually enjoy, now I watch him as a spectator. And, yeah, you know, like all of us, I see good and bad in Erik Estrada, but a lot of entertainment. He's an entertainment that loves to be an entertainer. So be it. God bless him.
Were you surprised at all about what a pop culture phenomenon CHiPS became? Were you ready for it to end when you left?
No, and that's a funny ego transition, isn't it? So you start out as a hick from Wyoming starring in another television series, luckily, and that's good, but it's kind of dorky, and the lines are kind of dorky, and there's no drama or method acting, so get over yourself, you know. You're basically being real. And be Larry Wilcox, a nice guy on a motorcycle, and that's about all you're going to bring to this role, right? First year, not a big deal, maybe going to get canceled. And then all of a sudden they put us on for the second year. And now we started doing personal appearances, and they said, you're going to go and sign autographs. They sell your autograph. Oh, I'm not doing that. You mean I'm going to charge for my autograph? They said, yeah, everyone does that. No, they don't. I said, you just sign them for someone that wants them. No, you go there and charge money for them. Oh, my God, that's embarrassing. I said, that's really embarrassing. And they said, well, you want to go or not? You know, you get 10 to 20,000 a day, and you sign autographs, and it's great. Says, all right, I guess I'll try it. I didn't even have a clue, right? Erik and I go to New York City to some car show of all things, They have our little table set up in a cigar box where people put their money in and we sign the autographs. And the line is out the building in the snowstorm in New York, around the building, people waiting to see John and Ponch and get autographs. And Erik, in his typical Latin lover, handsome young man that he was, French kissing ugly and pretty girls, doesn't matter what they look like, and I'm looking at him like, dude, what are you doing? And at that point, I think I realized this is out of control. And it just got better and better and better. And, we were two lucky young men that were on a television series and didn't realize that don't wear that hat too proud because it's going to get ugly pretty soon. And it's going to lose its identity. And pretty soon, like I was just in New York City with my family for a wedding thing. And I walked all over like a tourist and did all the things you do in New York City, right? I remembered with Erik when he took me to have Cuban food. He's a Puerto Rican, so fried bananas and all that stuff, right? It was good memories and Statue of Liberty and all the tourist things you do. And someone said on Facebook, did anyone recognize you? No, not one. Perfect. I said, because man, oh man, can that wear on a human being. Does anyone recognize you anymore, Larry? Hardly ever. And do you enjoy it? I really do enjoy it, because I can have a conversation like you and I are having, with a normal person, and he isn't going, oh gosh, can you sign this? They can't even talk. And now I get to have good conversations with good people. I learn something from everybody.
Boy, that's a good attitude to have.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, how do fans react when they see you today, but apparently they don't.
They don't give a shit.
Do you still ride motorcycles?
I had to ride in a parade the other day, and with the CHiPS uniform on. I didn't wear the pants. I wore the shirt, right, and a helmet. And all of the CHiPS guys, the California Air Patrol real guys, and the head of the CHP was going to be there. And he's a motor cop guy, too, really cool. And so my wife says, are you really going to ride a motorcycle? I mean, if you wreck that thing, you're going to make an ass of yourself. You're in a parade, right? And there are going to be cameras everywhere, because they'll advertise. If they don't recognize you, they'll make sure they know who you are, right? And so I ride the motorcycle. I'm waving. I'm thinking, I wonder if they even know who the hell I am. Right? But anyway, I ride the motorcycle, and I was good. But to be honest, I went and practiced.
Did you really?
Yeah. It was police motorcycle's heavy and big, and when you fall, it's not cool, and it's hard to get up, and you're making what of yourself. But so I still ride once in a while, and I don't really like riding in LA. It's too dangerous. And I have electric bikes. I got one for Erik and gave it to him, a free one, and we went riding one day. But he's like really recognizable. He's he keeps his hair black, and he looks like Erik Estrada still. So he'll say, when we'll do a Comic-Con and we'll sign autographs together, and he'll say to you, let's go out to dinner. I said, no, I'm not going with you. And he said, why? Because you're friggin' Elvis Presley, dude. You walk in and, and everyone sees it. Hey, isn't that Erik Estrada? I'm not going with you. It's too much attention. I like to just have dinner. So I always tease him. And in the airport, same thing. Everyone recognizes him.
Do you miss it at all? Apparently not.
I don't think so. I've asked myself that, because you have to be honest to yourself about that answer. You can give some false humility that seems to indicate that you don't care, right? So I had to really ask myself in private moments whether I did. And I don't. The only time I don't miss it, I really enjoy immersion with people. And also, but there are little moments where I kind of miss it. And what are those moments? They're selfish moments. Well, what are those? Well, when you're in a restaurant and no one gives a shit and you can't get in and you're just another Joe in the back of the line, those are moments where I selfishly miss it. But other than that, no, I don't.
We'll be back in a moment. Before acting, you served in the Marine Corps.
Right.
And you enlisted, right?
Yes. Well, a little bit. Let me be candid. What happened is my brother was in the Marine Corps, and there was a death in my family, so I went back to Wyoming. My sister was murdered, and I helped my mother and some other things. And because of that, I had dropped out of school. So now I was eligible for the draft. I got drafted, but I said, I'm not going in the Army. Hick from Wyoming says he's going into the Marine Corps. And so I joined the Marine Corps. So I joined on my own, but I would have gone into the military no matter what.
We're not that different in age, little
Right.
bit.
Yes.
But I can remember worrying about the draft.
Yes.
And when I came around, they had the lottery, the draft
Yes.
lottery. And I remember everybody in my family was watching television that day trying to see where my birth date would come up. Unfortunately, I was like number 277 or something. I didn't have to worry about it. But
Yeah.
And you went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
memories do you have of Vietnam? I mean,
Well, I have a bunch. I try not to bore you with indulgence, but
indulge me.
when you're a boy at 18, 19 years old, that's when the frontal cortex begins to barely mature, right? And so my perception of life was still that I was immortal, and I was proud to be in the Marine Corps and all those things that they brainwash you with. And so, but my brother was in the Marine Corps, and he told me, make sure you take every test that's available. So you're not just a grunt, an 03 infantryman. So I took every test. They said, hey, Wilcox, you passed the officer candidate school, so you can go to officer candidate school in Quantico, Virginia after boot camp. Boot camp was awful. And I said, well, what does that entail? And they said, well, you'll sign this agreement. What's that say? Another 6 years in the Marine Corps? No way. When I'm done here, I'm out of here, right? And so I didn't go to officer candidate school, but I was chosen to go to language school. I studied French in school, so I spoke a little French, right? And next thing I knew, they said, you're going to language school with the Army. You're going to be the only Marine up there at Fort Ord up by San Francisco. It's going to be beautiful, and you're really going to enjoy it. And I said, okay. And then I waved goodbye to all my buddies throwing their sea bags. They were going to jungle training for Vietnam, right? And then pretty soon they called my name. Wilcox, hey, we lost your orders, so just go to jungle training for now. We'll go to language school later. I said, okay. Next thing I know, I'm on a plane to Okinawa, and then from Okinawa, C-130, I land in Da Nang, Vietnam. And I get off the airplane, and I'm sitting in all that red dirt. And I'd gone through my military training, MOS, and I was an 0844, which means that I would be inserted by helicopter with a theodolite. I would survey fire bases, set up fire bases, then they bring in guns, 05 and 55 howitzers, set up a fire base, and they extract me and three buddies of mine, and we go to another LZ, right? Or I would be fire direction control, or I was FO, forward observer. Those are the three things I was trained in. Well, forward observer, you have a life expectancy of 16 seconds, right? So not what I wanted to do. So I ended up sitting there waiting for my orders, reading Life magazine about 9th Marines on this place called Contien, getting their ass kicked, excuse me. And so every day they got bombed, and artillery and mortars and bandages and blood and everything, Wilcox, 2331-876, Contien. Oh, I almost start crying.
Oh,
and so
you're in a strange place and you get orders like that.
Yeah.
I would have started crying.
And there, your fellow Marines, or what's your MOS? 0844 FO. You're not going to even live, dude. It's really encouraging. So I get on a C-130. We land in Dong Ha, Vietnam, on these little steel plates that they have because they don't have runways. It's bouncy as hell. And we get off the airplane. So you're going to go in a PC personnel carrier up to this little base a little farther north, approaching the DMZ. And we're only like 3 miles from the DMZ then. And they said, hey, lay down in the back of the truck, and we're going to get sniper fire, right? I don't even have a flak jacket, no rifle, nothing, no jungle boots. I mean, What do you mean? Where's my flak jacket? We have to sit back here. Yeah. So they were screwing with you. So I went to that base, and to make a long story short, from then on, it was like, talk about a conflict of vision and lenses and perspective and provocation and noises and looking out over the beautiful valley with rivers and rice paddies and looks like a premier farmland in Wisconsin or somewhere, right? And you keep hearing these little black cats. And what are black cats? Those are little firecrackers going pip, 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 pip. There's firefights, guys getting killed and Vietnamese getting killed. And it was like, dude, I'm standing up here like I'm watching a movie. I got to step into that pretty soon, right? In and out of the movie. So it was very bizarre, to give you a long-winded answer.
Did you ever suffer from PTSD?
I didn't think so, but, you know, PTSD's another thing in life that has its own lifespan and maturity, if you will. It's really kind of a lurking shadow that creeps into you. And so when I first noticed they asked me to fly to Washington, D.C., give a speech for the president and for a bunch of veterans about POW/MIA issues. So I flew there, and they said, the American Legion said, would you do this commercial for us about save the American flag? Because desecration of the American flag was not cool, they said, right? Although the intellectual argument of freedom of expression I understood, but I thought, okay, I'll do the flag commercial. And so I went to do the flag commercial, made a complete ass of myself. And every time I would start talking about the flag, I would remember something in Vietnam, right? And it just started getting worse and worse. And then, you know, even talking about it right now bothers me, but I don't know, 38 takes later, sobbing like a little baby. I says, damn, maybe my blood sugar's wrong, right? Didn't want to confront the fact that it was PTSD. Then later in life, much later, I always enjoy speaking. I was giving a speaking engagement every year at Memorial Day. And every time the gentleman who would pay me to come give the speeches, who owned the cemetery or cemeteries, he would say to me, you know, Larry, you're quite the actor. And I said, why is that? And he said, every time you've done this speech at this one time, your voice cracks and it gets emotional. How do you do that? I didn't answer right. I just, you know, it's taps. When they play taps, it bothers me, right? And so then progressing on, I'll give you one more short story, and I'm cognizant of your time. And they asked me, this guy at the cemetery recommended me to be a speaker at various situations, events. And I said, okay, the policemen want you to come and give a speech for these 8 families who lost their husbands, the breadwinner, in this killing, right? I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'd be honored to do that. And, you know, we'll pay you such and such fee. I said, no, it's all right, I'll do this speech, right? So I drive down there, and I remember I got out of my car, and I felt that low blood sugar thing again, which wasn't low blood sugar, right? I said, okay. So I go in there, and all the captains and heads of police departments are up on the stage with me, and the actor Larry Wilcox is going to give this speech, right? And bless us with his insight. God, start speaking about trust and loyalty and what it really means to a raw human being, and just began sobbing, you know, and couldn't stop sobbing. And I'm looking over to the policeman where, you know, in life, abandonment's a funny feeling. And it always haunts individuals from different points in their life who abandon you and why. And I'm looking to the policeman kind of for give me some support or something, right? Everyone's kind of ashamed, you know, doing this, like avoiding me, keeping a third-party arm's length from this lunatic sobbing over here, not a little bit, a lot, out of control, right? Families out there, full of audiences out there for this commemorative speech for their family members, and their children never could get control.
Really?
And then they all left, and I'm standing up there on the stage alone, thinking, damn, dude, what is wrong with you? And yeah, I have PTSD, you know.
In this day and age today, they would call that, you're being authentic.
Yes. Yeah, well, not then. I don't think people understood it for a long time.
Right.
Obviously, none of us understood it, so you do your best to not expose yourself. I did one other time on a ETV interview or something where I started to go there, and I hurried up and grabbed myself so I didn't indulge, because once it goes, then it's a snowball, and it just keeps going. So it's but it makes you also appreciate, as you walk around the world. One of the things I was driving here thinking about, I've always felt like I'm a lifelong learner, but I'm not sure I've learned anything about humankind. It's like so confusing and so up and down. Talk about a concerto of all different lengths, right? And just trust and loyalty are hard to find.
I'm going to backtrack for 1 second. You mentioned your sister was murdered?
Yes.
How did you ever deal with that? Grief is hard enough to get over in normal circumstances, but that is not normal.
No, it was. So I was going to college here in California, and it was a really sad day. I'm in the classroom, and the president of the college comes and says, "Is there a student in here, Larry Wilcox?" I said, "Yeah." I'm raised my hand, and I'm thinking, well, I got in trouble for something. I don't know what I did, but I'm in trouble, right? And he says, "Could you come out here for a minute?" So I walk out, and he says, "You're supposed to call this number right now, collect, right?" I said, "Okay." "Can you tell me what it's about?" "No." So I called the number, talked to a relative of mine, and she informs me that my sister Sharon had just been murdered in front of my mom, in my mom's office, and my sister's 3 children, and 17 witnesses in this office where my mom worked. So, again, vacillating between real and surreal life, I look over, and there are a bunch of students enjoying being students, laughing, flirting, whatever they're doing over there, noisy, crass, unaware of my circumstance, right? But I always tell people, your turkey dinner, everyone has a turkey dinner, so don't look at life as just your turkey dinner. But my turkey dinner was traumatic right then, right? Excuse the analogy. And so I get off the phone and tell them in filthy language to shut up. And they look at me, and they can see the violence in my eyes, right? I'm not there right then. And they kind of move away and exit the thing. And the next thing I know, I go back to Wyoming and talk about a change from Beverly Hills, right? Now I'm going back to Wyoming. Some people rave about Wyoming. It's like asking someone why they bought the Edsel, and they say, "I love the Edsel." Yeah, but why do you ask them? They bought it, right? So same thing in Wyoming. So there's a part of Wyoming that's great, raw and clean and unexplored and adventurous, and there's a part that's suffocating and oppressive, right? And so anyway, I go back there, try to help my mom because her daughter's dead. These 3 children, watch their mom being murdered. And it's interesting that you bring this up because yesterday I'm online looking at the death of Jerry Spence, the famous attorney.
Oh, right.
Yes. And Jerry Spence wore his suede coat with fringe and cowboy hat, was a cowboy from Wyoming, a wannabe cowboy. And he defended the murderer who murdered my sister. And so the murder of my sister became a long chapter of our lives that we don't have time for today, but I'll give you the high, low points. And so I started working on the railroad. You do a lot of different jobs in your life, especially as an actor. Hopefully you have resilience and as you acclimate, as you well know. And so anyway, what do you do in Wyoming? You work in construction, you work in an oil field, you work on a cattle ranch, or, you work for the railroad. That's basically it. or you can go really low and do something else. So I worked on the railroad in the middle of nowhere in this little town called Bitter Creek, Wyoming, trying to make enough money to help my mom and these 3 children and so on. And then the trial, and now Jerry Spence does a manipulative tool that all attorneys do is sometimes over time, if you have 17 witnesses, maybe 15 of them will die. So your hope is not to depose them at some point in time, but depose them 10, 11, 12 years later. That's exactly what he did. And then they were almost all gone, right? Or didn't want to travel 1,500 miles to do a deposition. So he used that, and then I always tell people, don't judge the verdict of guilty or not guilty. That's all bullshit. So what do you mean he was guilty? No, don't judge that guilty thing. That's really manipulative, because the whole system has so many loopholes in it. You don't understand all the language. I mean, that's why you have attorneys, and don't use a public defender. You better hire a damn good attorney. But the problem is that, Jerry Spence was a storyteller as an attorney. And there's not a so-called moral azimuth or vector. If you're an attorney, your vector is to be successful for the witness, or for your client, excuse me. And, that's what he did. He got the guy off, amongst other killers that he got off. And the killer, his name was Joe Escobar. He went to Evanston, this insane asylum they used to have in Evanston, Wyoming, because then he could have sex with girlfriends and go out and so on as a prisoner, right? Even though, he was definitely guilty. And he got out of jail, came back to our little town of Rawlins, Wyoming, and my brothers and I, we were, jocks and kind of had our local, what I call small town swag, right? Which means shit. And everyone thought, oh, this guy's going to come back and the Wilcox brothers going to kill this guy, right? And so he came back. He got in a fist fight in a bar. That's all there are in Wyoming, or in Rawlins, bars and whorehouses, right? And he got in a fist fight, and the guy shot him in the head and killed him right there. So he came back to kill, basically, right? So that was the death of my sister, sadly, and her 3 children.
Was she older or younger?
Older. I think she died at 22, 23 years old. And, it's about, respectfully, it's about our choices in life. We make choices, with relationships, and it's painful. And she made, in my humble opinion, she made a bad choice. But what happens is what happens. The important thing is there's a ripple effect that perpetuates itself through generations. And the ripple effect was for those children. And there were 3 children, 2 living, 1 dead. And just has an enormous scarring effect. Talk about PTSD. Wow, not for me, for those children, right? So after that, I came back to California, then that's when I joined the Marine Corps and went to Vietnam. Came back from Vietnam, went to 29 Palms, California, and then just started chasing the film business and entertainment.
The reason I was curious, I had 3 sisters. I've lost them all, none through murder.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that it leaves a big hole. And I understand what you're saying about the ripple effect.
Yeah.
The whole family, her children, one of my sister's children are, no grandmother, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one to turn to when they're having problems and say, Mom, what can I do about this? It really is tragic, very tragic. Okay, let's move on to lighter topics. You're a pilot too, right?
Right. Yeah.
There must be some part of you that is a thrill seeker.
Yeah. I used to say when I was young, that I think I had some kind of proclivity for any kind of dangerous event, and I enjoyed fear, right? So how far could I go on the fear envelope, or at least scribble outside the lines a little bit to experience outside that envelope, right? Because that's a kind of a skews analogy, an orgasmic moment. It's like, wow, you're actually going to do that. For example,
adrenaline rush.
Oh my God, I flew in A-7 fighter jets against F-16s, and I won't tell you the whole story because it'd take too much of your time, but I had to eject.
No.
So I'm doing Raymond Burr's series in Denver, Colorado, right? I'm playing an ace star of the show episode.
Ironsides?
Yeah, I think it was called the Perry Mason Show.
Oh,
then.
okay.
It was after
he did
Ironside.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I didn't tell the producers because they would have got mad. You can't go flying in jets. We're filming. What are you doing? But of course, I was going to do it, and so I'm an aviation groupie. Anything about aviation, I love, and I'm a pilot and all that stuff. Right? Have my own plane, get upside down, do all that stuff. Loops, crazy, buzz actors. I buzzed every film set in L.A. and that piss them off, right? I see a reflector and here comes Larry. And so we're flying this airplane, long story short. We went through all the war games, just high G forces and pullouts and, almost blacking out and all that great stuff. And in my middle ear, the cochlea doesn't have a lot of water or fluid in there, so I don't get dizzy like some people do. And like my wife gets crazy dizzy. And so he said, hey, we have an emergency. We have to eject. He's just kidding me, right?
Yeah.
No, he was serious. I hear Denver. This is Denver Tower. Denver Tower. We have an emergency bone, and I'm listening to that. And I said, what's wrong? He says, hydraulics. I said, oh, I'm a pilot. My plane has hydraulics, retractable gear, and when they won't go down, which sometimes that happens with gear, you can pump them down, and then you can wag the airplane, wig and wag, and boom, lock them in place and land the airplane in an emergency. Good, you know that, Larry. Impressive. But not the nose wheel. The nose wheel will flop around, even though it's down. So when we land, we're going to crash and burn and explode. I'm a Top Gun pilot, one of the best in the world, but I'm an Air Force pilot. And that's not good. I said, why is that? Because you have to catch the hook on the plane, and I've never caught a hook in my life. I've never had to. I land on runways, not ships, right? Aircraft carriers. I said, okay. So he says, remember your ejection seat training? Because they checked, they wouldn't let me fly unless I had already been through ejection seat training. I had flown before in the Marine Corps in A4s and had gone through ejection seat training, right? 225 Gs per second. And then you wake up and the things open and then you parachute down, right? So he says, which one are you going to pull? You can pull this one or you can pull this one, right? And recently, some guy pulled it on the runway, some guest in a jet airplane, and he ejected from the runway like an idiot, right? So he said, don't touch, those are rockets. So when that rocket explodes, you're going out, you'll pass out because, so many G's. I say, yeah, I know. So he says, okay, put your visor all the way down to your mouth. Yeah. Keep your hands and knees in, remember, and your toes, because you're going to just blow through that glass. So what do you mean blow through the glass? The canopy goes down, and then I go, not in an A7, you go through the glass. Oh, my God. I said, really? Yeah, so put the visor down. Now, here's what's going to do. I'm going to try to catch that hook. 1, 2, 3, eject. If you don't get the hook, Larry, I'm ejecting you. So make sure you eject because your arm's going to, keep your arm in there. So, okay, I'll eject. Don't worry. So part of me's back to your fear and excitement. I'm saying, oh, my God, no one's got to eject. I'm going to get eject, right? So cool. And then I'm whimpering like a baby, right? You're going to die, dude. So he said, one try. If we catch it, great. If we don't, I'm popping up, and then you're ejecting. We'll try to get up as fast as we can, as high, and see all those asbestos suits down there and the firemen waiting. I said, yeah. Those are all emergency vehicles, so, if we catch on fire, get the hell out of this airplane, right? And my wife's down there watching her husband dying.
Oh, great.
Right? Yeah. Anyway, we caught the hook, right? And everyone ran out, Wilcox, you got the $1.99 ride, man. So aviation's always been really good. I've always wanted to buy an A4 so I could have my own little jet, right? But there's a part of me, especially at my age now, says, dude, you're way past it. That's like thinking a 17-year-old's attracted to you, you know?
Well, every once in a while, you can let yourself.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've had a really good life so far, up to this point.
I've had 10 lives in one.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for, now I'm just trying to transition because, you have highs and lows. Life's a crescendo of many parts. And now I just try to, I've just written 2 scripts I'm really proud of. Doesn't mean they're good, but I think they are really good. And you get really nervous about your perspective. So you have to always say everything with humility. I'm a part owner in some technology companies, one that does ultraviolet light where we increase the amplitude of the ultraviolet light by about 1,500%, and so we can kill cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer with it. We've had independent third-party tests done with 6 figures to have them done every time you get one of those clinical tests done, right? And then another part is for HVAC systems, so all ducts, the ingress and egress of air, we kill all bacteria, COVID, mold, and viruses in the air. So as the air passes this really neat little light called UVC science, it kills it. So I'm part owner in that company. Trying to buy another company I can't disclose right now in UK, and hopefully we'll get that done. And I don't have a representation as an agent. And, I would just say that there's so many talented actors, singers, hosts, speakers, etc. in the world. So get over yourself. But in the meantime, if you really want to, I would like to be back in acting because it's, I call it beach bum money. A lot of handsome beach bums are movie stars. I'm not going to say who. But they're not actors, right? But they're okay, but they're movie stars. And the money they make is off the charts. So that gives a lot of economic freedom, which perpetuates itself through your generations and families. And I wish I could do that. But I have kind of accepted, Larry, you don't have the right agent. You're not with ICM or CAA or one of the other major agencies. And there's no stock in your barn, and meaning your agent doesn't have another 8 guys that he can leverage you in and then get a deal for you and perpetuate your career. So here's what your choices are. You either start, and producing is about one thing, raising capital. And if you can't raise capital and you're not good at it, and you have to be really careful because that's a dangerous path. And I got in trouble for that once accidentally, but ignorance is not a plea. You get burnt for that, right? So it's very important that you have capital. Otherwise, excuse the crass term, but it's applicable. It's mental masturbation. So you better find the right job and have resilience and leadership and do other things. And if the acting career came back, could you do it? Yeah, I could do it pretty well. Would I be the Marlon Brando of the world? Nah, probably not. Not with this face, but different people that are a click off are interesting, but they're a click off. Intriguing, but they're a click off. So anyway, onward and upward.
Thank you, Larry. You brought a lot more to the table than I expected.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening. Turn your air conditioning on now.
You know.
Yeah.
You know the drill.
Yeah.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerly. Theme music by Brian Sanashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.